Now for the Desert Palace. I like the deserty remix theme here, but because it's so slow in tempo, mainly with the voice chanting for the melody, it's hard to remember it exactly. It's memorable, but not that catchy, if that makes any sense. Still, I really like the flute part. Of course, the challenge in this dungeon is using the sand rod. There's BMOs in this dungeon that knock you on your back, which was an unpleasant surprise that I should have expected. They're in the original Desert Palace, but they're so unfun that I didn't want to see them again. At least I confused with walls and sand walls to ignore them, but I still got hit at first. Creatively enough, they managed to make the desert dungeon function like a water dungeon, only raise the sand level instead of the water level, allowing you to not only walk in the sand, but also create sand pillars. I was expecting the puzzle where you made a sand path between 4 crystal switches to require me to hit them all simultaneously with a spin attack, but instead just hitting 2 and then 2 more is fine. So much for challenge. I thought that after the wall south of the sand there was lowered, the sand would fall into the area south of it, but instead the wall just lowered to no effect. Then I had to press down 2 switches with gargoyle statues, one that's all the way at the bottom level requiring me to push it onto sand and pull it towards me. That's creative too. I just wish pushing and pulling was at least just as fast as walking normally. I don't care if it's unrealistic, it's less tedious. Now there's 2 statues I have to get up to the switches using the sand rod, not just 1. That's even more tedious. I like that sand bridges fall apart 1 square at a time, starting from the earliest one that was made. It gives you leeway time to walk across them when they're disappearing. I know since a trap knocked me down from one. The mini-boss that required me to get it out of the sand, reminding me of Pokey, felt glitchy to me as I kept attacking it with my sword and the sword just clipped through it without actually damaging it. When that music played, I expected a lot more than just 1 enemy. It wasn't even really a mini-boss, it wasn't challenging. After that, there were 2 chests that I couldn't open because I didn't have the Titan's mitts yet. My randomizer playing showed because I got worried that I wouldn't find those gloves in this dungeon at all because the level design naturally leads you to chests you couldn't possibly get right away, as if at one point in development they expected you to have the Titan's mitts by this point. Pulling a lever sends a river of sand down to the southern room. Below that river, that's somehow physically possible with sand, I almost missed a bunch of rupees because they were hidden under it thanks to the top-down view. It's satisfying getting chests and stuff because the sand level's high enough for it. When I went to the monster tail chest, at first I was panicking because I was mashing A and couldn't get out of the sand wall, but eventually Link got out of it from a corner. It was probably just because the chest was too close to the edge I was facing. They should have moved that chest to the left a little. I had to stop and wait for my meter to regenerate because it ran out and sent me out of the wall a second too early near the Titan's mitts. Is this what playing as Silver the Hedgehog feels like? They shouldn't have level design basically forcing you to stop and wait for a meter to recharge. It's inherently pace-breaking. I like that there's mummies and snake ropes here. They suit the desert atmosphere a lot better. But then you have those jellyfish from the water dungeon here. And since they're annoying enemies that take 3 hits to kill, it just makes them not belonging here all the more annoying. Lifting some boulders on a sand floor got me access to a key chest, which had 2 boulders to the left of it with nothing under them. I have a question. Why would the level designers put 2 boulders that take a while to lift up in the level if you don't achieve anything from lifting them? For all I knew, there were red rupees under them. Then I exited the dungeon and went north to a cave with the second section of the dungeon, just like in the original. The next part of the dungeon right away bored me by making me wait through floor tiles flying me for 6 billion years, until finally I ended off with 2 sandworms. I was mashing the hell out of the B button and the tiles still hit me, something that doesn't happen in the original where it was more skill-based and you could easily avoid getting hit by any of them. This flying floor tile thing may have happened in the original dungeon too, but you could totally ignore them in that one both times by just getting the key from a jar and moving on. Keys never appear in jars in this game, by the way, because suddenly that's not epic enough. No, we need to put them in chests that remind you what keys are every time. That's epic. And having a mandatory flying tile room right away in the second part of the dungeon doesn't create a good first impression. Finally, I'd like to point out that Four Swords Adventure did the flying floor tiles concept a lot better because they were actually creative with it. Because eventually the dungeon would move on to sending stuff that wasn't the floor at you. That gave the concept a lot more charm. Now that's interesting. I left up a boulder and used a sand rod to uncover a chest. Too bad the sand wall created from that takes a while to disappear. And that's adding insult to injury, since when I uncover the chest that's still hidden by that sand wall, I already have to wait a couple seconds while the ta-da chime plays. The original Link to the Past never forced you to stand still and do nothing while that chime played, making you hate it. Walking on a sand bridge in that same room was annoying because I had to walk along a narrow bridge in a game where you can barely walk in a straight line, avoiding traps, and then I had to outright stop and wait for a jellyfish that shouldn't be in this dungeon to stop electrifying himself because I didn't feel like hookshotting him, I guess. Not that that would have one-shotted him anyways. You can easily avoid the attack of the Beamos that's right of here by putting it on a sand pillar and then not going up the stairs when its elevated laser goes to the right. It was nice, like I beat it. Even though you can't literally beat it because Beamos are invincible, unlike in Wind Waker where they knew better. Then there's an overwhelming room where it's only partially sand and you have to push away a statue that, when removed using the sand rod, causes a shooting arrow to constantly hit a crystal switch to raise blocks periodically. I like that when you push that statue down the stairs, it will speed things up by moving down them faster on its own, rather than comically tumbling down it and forcing Link to push it to stand upright himself. Then they made me waste my time because it turned out I was pushing that statue for nothing. It served its purpose the minute I removed it from its first location. I wish they could have had a jar or something destructible like that instead, so players wouldn't be tricked into tediously pushing around blocks that rise and fall without them. Why does the game stop for a chime the second time you get a chest out of the sand? That makes the gimmick become more tedious and satisfying because it just becomes a pace breaker. It's kind of a fun creative challenge using the sand rod to allow rolling balls to hit and break yellow blocks, though it's tricky to do. The balls will knock Link on his back annoyingly just from him walking into them from behind, which doesn't make any sense. They shouldn't have the momentum to do that. And the balls don't look like they're hitting the yellow blocks with nearly enough momentum to break them. This puzzle is easier than it looks because when the ball falls onto the sand below it, you have a little leeway time to raise the sand directly below it so that it would be able to progress with a higher path. Doing this puzzle raises the sand level to the south, letting you get the big key. Constantly having to fuse with the sand walls when you're already on top of platforms rather than just walking onto them gets tedious. Especially since the camera angle constantly switches when you fuse and then unfuse, disorienting me, making me briefly worry that I'll pop out of the wall into a lower level from rushing it going to the wrong place. The only reason I was able to tell that I could go south from there to get to a fairy fountain was that they showed it and the door to it on the map, because from a top-down perspective, they give you no indication on the top screen that you can go south to another room from there. It's nice to be able to take advantage of the Beamos and its laser by raising it with the sand rod and getting its spinning laser to hit not only crystal switches to raise the door, but also hit a crystal switch that raises colored blocks. The beat all the enemies room south of here made me wait around a little before I walked around, and only then did it spawn the enemies. I liked using the sand rod to raise green bomb enemies to blow up yellow blocks, which eventually allow a shooting arrow to continuously hit a crystal switch raising blocks. Before that, there's a hidden passageway to the left, blocked by the top-down perspective, leading to a trail of blue rupees ending in a red rupee. Again, if this was Minish Cap or Four Swords Adventures, there would be a like there, but there's not. I then raised the sand level of this room with the lever, satisfied at all the different creative ways I could use the sand rod to beat the dungeon, and went to the boss room, gradually remembering how terrible the boss of this dungeon is. On the way out, I jumped into the quicksand at first because it was completely different looking from the other sand, and it gave me the idea that jumping into it was what I had to do to send me down to the boss arena. How was I supposed to know it functioned as a bottomless pit when this is the first time I've ever seen this kind of sand before? So I go to Lowrule after collecting some convenient heart jars, and oh crap, a boss forcing you to use a sand rod to attack it. You are under time pressure whenever you're standing on the sand pillars you made. And because those pillars just have to be above bottomless pit sand, and you'll be standing on them and only them when you attack the boss, you will fall into the pit every time you go to attack the boss in the second phase. The first phase is fine, but the second phase, the boss, which is like a flower plant thing, unique for a desert, it starts shooting these flower plants as projectiles you can fortunately attack, but you're so busy focusing on attacking as much as possible that you'll get hit by them and knocked into the pit. Because you're on a very narrow pathway of platforms, meaning that any attack to Link sends him into the pit from knockback. It's like Castlevania the boss. This especially applies to when the boss starts doing its blast you sand attack. Although that's at least telegraphed, it kinda glows a little. So pretty soon I learned to move out of the way and go right back to spamming the B button. The boss is generally fun, but it's also chaotic. It should really give you a proper solid surface to stand on when attacking the boss, instead of thin, narrow platforms you can get knocked into a pit from that will disappear under your feet and send you into the pit. It's sloppy design. Oh, great. The sage I rescued is Irene, meaning I actually stood still for a while, reluctant to save her, because once I do, I'll have to mash A through her text boxes every single time I warp anywhere. But even if I had put off saving her, it'd just be a bigger hassle because I'll have to backtrack all the way here to save her and get access to Lorule Castle. Not to mention there's only a few dungeons left. The dungeon full of darkness in a game with a pathetic lamp that's preceded by a stupid stealth section, and the ice ruins, which, come on, it's an ice dungeon. Of course it sucks. I'm not given much of a reason to look forward to the rest of the game. Irene, or rather, Erin in French, actually complains about you taking so long to save her. Does she have different dialogue if she's the first one you saved? And also, was she conscious in that crystal the whole time, with no food, water, or anything to do? If not, then how does she know that you took a long time to save her when from her perspective, no time should have passed after she was imprisoned in the crystal? Screw you, Girouette. I'll take a break when I feel like it. Just for that, I'm seeing what the potion shop lady says about her granddaughter being rescued before I quit. Irene talks to you telepathically when she sends her broom to you, but she's not on the broom. So it feels very arbitrary that I'm forced to mash A through her dialogue when she's not even on the broom anymore. It's annoying that they don't even give you the option. The minute you walk into the potion shop, the witch immediately talks to Link and gets told about Irene. Video game carrying potential feels better when it's actually your choice. I only had enough monster tails to make one blue potion, while the red potion only restores 8 hearts, and I drank the red potion I had before finding that out, so good thing the red potion costs 50 rupees compared to 200 for the blue potion that's actually worth something at this point in the game. Yeah, this is so much better than Link's Up Pass, where you could just easily buy 3 of the best potions with the money you earned right away. Here I'm forced to settle for an inferior potion because I didn't grind monsters in a Zelda game. Grinding should not be practically mandatory for a potion that restores all your health. At least not in a Zelda game, when you constantly expect to have that kind of potion. At least when I wanted to drink my red potion I was allowed to despite having full health. But I miss the days when the red potion did restore all your health and the blue potion did that and restored magic. Those were the days when the red potion looked a lot better than it does here. Why does Irene feel the need to remind me that you can keep berries and potions in bottles? At this point in the game? A Link to the Past never treated you like an idiot. What is it with the modern Zelda games in doing that? It's tone deaf. Also, while you can give the potion lady the good news that a relative is saved, you can't tell Sahasrahla that his relative is saved. He doesn't even get the idea when you use a sand rod on him. It's like they half-assed it. I hate that in order to get to the Mai buried in the sand in Kakariko Village, you have to go through a house first, because that just adds 2 loading screens to wait through as you go in and out of a building. When the original game didn't do that to let you go into a cuckoo's pen, where there aren't even any cuckoos justifying it being so enclosed. Speaking of Mai in the sand, I had to pay to play the piece of shit rob you of the rupees you found invisible time limit minigame just to get access to some Mai. I technically would have won the minigame if I had gone to talk to her before the time limit ran out like I had planned to after searching the entire area and finding the Mai. But I wasn't expecting them to actually tell me when the time limit ran out when it did. You know what especially sucks about that place? First off, it's a replacement for the digging minigame that doesn't let you dig because you have no shovel at all to do so, so why even put it in the game? And second most importantly, it doesn't even give you that much money! The digging minigame felt like it gave me a lot more money. This minigame just has me cut regular bushes and grass for regular amounts of rupees. There's some tiles with tornado rod for a meager reward, there's some boulders with just green rupees in them, and some sparkling rocks that just shoot out green rupees. Who cares? Considering the progress that Four Swords Adventures made with a shovel, like giving it an upgraded version that makes noise when you get to a treasure, I would have expected the game that's all about being an upgraded homage to the game where the shovel first appeared to have a better version of the shovel as an item, and actually use it a lot instead of it just being a middleman to the flute. Hell, even the GBA version of Link to the Past is the shovel better because you can use it on an arrow formation of stone to get a bunch of red rupees, and you can keep it after getting the flute. Here, they don't let you dig at all, outright removing something that was in the original game. The closest thing you have to being able to dig is using the sand rod to uncover chests, like, one time. They could very easily use the sand rod as a shovel. Granted, digging was really pointless in Link to the Past, but they could have made the shovel more useful, or at least made it a part of the minigame. You could have clear parts of the ground where you can dig with the sand rod to get to underground grottos, like the wolf spots in Twilight Princess. But no, instead of an item had to be extremely situational because modern Zelda. I then went to the Dark World version of the minigame to get the Mai Mai there. I swear, this minigame is impossible to win in, especially this version where you're distracted by being grabbed by like-likes and can't keep track of the time at the same time. There's all sorts of walls, like-likes, there's sand that doesn't exactly have boatloads of money to dig up from it. It's a very overwhelming place. It doesn't exactly give me time to get money, even if I got an acceptable amount of money from it to begin with. I barely got any money from it, and what little I got was taken away. Combine these minigames with the cuckoo dodging minigame with a terrible reward, and this is how you do minigames wrong. What's the point of having two steaks to the left of Ravio's shop that don't do anything? And of course making Ravio waste your time talking to right when you enter his shop. I also hate Ravio's shop music. It's too fast and chaotic. It sounds like it doesn't know what it's doing. What's annoying about upgrading the sand rod is that if you already beat the sand dungeon, it feels pointless to do so. I don't feel inclined to upgrade my boomerang considering I barely used it the whole game. Which is ironic, it's so helpful stunning enemies with it in Link to the Past. I guess the weapons of enemies being able to block the boomerang just hurts the utility that much. None of the items feel appealing to buy because I'm not really using any of them anymore. They're all situational. But I want to spend money anyways, so I bought the hammer. After wasting time going to the Low World Blacksmith, forgetting that I don't have enough ore, I went to the underground cave in the cemetery and found numerous flaws with it. First, it's dark, and you'd think the lamp in an updated Link to the Past game would be a lot better, instead of making me wish I was playing a game older than I am. And second, I found a chest with just one green rupee, so thanks for wasting my time with a cutscene of opening a chest and text reminding me what a rupee is, instead of just having a jar there. And third, I was forced to attack a bunch of skulls until I finally found the floor switch to open the door ahead, when I had no indication of where the floor switch was. That room was tedious. In theory, it's nice to have a low world sewers, like they should have a sewers. But look, the next room once again has a chest with a tiny amount of rupees, this time with one having just a blue rupee, wasting my time for just 5 rupees. This room was absolutely enraging to me because it's so dark that not only was I constantly being hit by rats and bats from off screen, not only was I stumbling around blind because the lamp's light is too tiny, but I actually fell down before I should because I didn't see that I should fuse with a wall and go right to get the key, because it was so dark that I couldn't get the idea of how to progress through the room, and there are no torches to light up, which is especially annoying since this level design lazily rips off the same level design from the Hyrule Sewers, which did have torches. Here it's so dark it's practically unplayable. After this is a very tedious room where I had to beat a bunch of the enemies in the dark that go to sleep constantly invincible and deal way too much damage to me. That took forever. I'd like to point out that I have the blue mail and they still do way too much damage. With my health being lowered, I was sorely reminded of how if I was playing Link to the Past, I could have healed in this very cave by talking to the sheep NPC. But here, I have no such luck. Irene wastes my time reminding me that yes, my sword can shoot sword beams, and I warped to get my sword tempered. Okay, I officially have no idea how to temper the sword. I got 3 sword tempering ores, I talked to the blacksmith who keeps saying the same mopey things, I even used the sword in front of him multiple times and he still won't try to help me. In the original game, it was obvious you could get a reward by talking to the dwarves because you saved one of them. And okay, it wasn't that obvious because all talking to them right away did was have them say thank you, and you actually had to leave and go back in to get your sword tempered. But at least after all that, all you had to do was talk to them. Here, I outright walked away and didn't get my sword tempered, and was too mad to look up a guide because I had no idea what to do. Is there some more ore that I'm missing? I have 3 already. Also, it was annoying that a bomb-throwing Cyclops kept throwing bombs at me, taking my health down when I was trying to get the blacksmith to do his fucking job. Why are there enemies here? If there are so many dangerous monsters about, why are the people of this town still alive? And And most importantly, why do I deal so little damage to the Cyclops at this point in the game? Why does he take 8 billion hits to kill? With the goddamn Master Sword! It's tedious! This overworld is tedious! Low rules enemies take way too many hits to kill. It's cracked and fragmented, forcing me to warp all over the place. And it doesn't even have that much to do in it. The original had more caves and a Quake medallion to find. And it had thieves that you could talk to that would give you money. And before I turned the game off at Death Mountain, a Girouette told me to take a break again, when Irene had already nagged me to do so earlier. Maybe Nintendo should focus on making games that are so good that you actively want to play them for a long time. Like Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town, I can't put that game down. In fact, the sheer fact that I get exhausted from this game after just one dungeon and want to turn it off and take a break is proof that it's a worse game, because I could beat Link to the Past multiple times over in 1 week, beating it just 2 sittings, 2 days, without getting that tired of it, despite the fact that I've played it dozens of times already, and its dungeons are a lot more bland and uncreative. And even Minish Cap, I can gladly play that game for longer than this, despite the overworld padding. This game, on the other hand, something about it just gets me fatigued of playing it after only one dungeon or two, and then I have to put it down. And it's not like I'm using the worthless 3D effect either. A truly great game, you wouldn't want to take a break from it. In the original, you could just jump down from the top of Death Mountain's east side to the bottom. In this game, you're forced to go through the long cave to get to the bottom. Keeping the guy I helped out with the milk staying here ruins the feeling of I helped him, because he hasn't gone home yet, when that was the whole point of giving him the healing milk. I got completely lost trying to get to the ice ruins because I went through that cave where you fall down on the platforms twice and end up back where I was, when all I wanted was to get to the bottom of the mountain. What's so fucking hard about just letting me jump down from the top? I warped to the left side for nothing, thinking I could hookshot over to the right side like Link to the Past. Because that was convenient level design, giving you options. Instead, I'm left with no clue about how to progress. Then I noticed the portal on the left side. Yeah, that's so intuitive when the left side of Dark Death Mountain was worthless in Link to the Past. Also, while I appreciate the variety of having an ice mountain for Lowell's Mountain, being constantly frozen helplessly by snowball throwing yetis is annoying, thanks. Not to mention their brick walls of health too, so I don't bother killing them. Enemies are annoying when you don't even bother to take the time to kill them. What is the purpose in the level design of putting multiple giant boulders to lift that have nothing under them? It wastes seconds of my time lifting them for nothing. I mean, to be fair, Link to the Past had that too. Link to the Past also had boulders that you lifted and they didn't give you anything. But it was a problem there too. They should have at least put a green rupee under them or something. At least I can dash up the ladder fast. That ladder used to be the most tedious part of Death Mountain. Ooh, I like that you can jump down from the ledge with the Mai and land in the middle of the ladder. It prevented me from having to land on top of a Yeti on the bottom of the ladder. Oh, for fuck's sake, I can't get to the right side of the mountain from here. Trying to go to the right from the bottom side of the mountain has you disappointed, because despite there being a bridge, the broken bridge arbitrarily doesn't have a stake to hookshot over to the right of it, forcing you to linearly go exactly one way to the right side of the mountain. Well, God forbid we give the player options to make it different from Link to the Past in a positive way. We gotta make this as tedious as possible. At least the left side of the mountain replaced the Great Fairy with fairies. The left side of the mountain is only used for the Tower of Peril that the Great Spin Attack wrecks. The mountain is so much more linear than Link to the Past, where there are 2 ways of getting to the bottom of the right side of the mountain, and as a result, if you don't know how to go through the maze cave, you'll be stuck and it'll take even longer to get to the worst dungeon in the game than it should, making it more tedious. I forgot that there was a moving platform to the east of the Circle of Lynels I could take, because it was gone when I got to it since it moves by itself and all. So I didn't think to go that way. There is zero indication in that cave that taking X platform sends you to a dead end with an annoying guy and taking Y platform actually progresses you. Just when I thought I'd be spared Hilda wasting my time being at Captain Obvious because she didn't talk to me on the left side of Lowell Mountain, she lets me down on the right side of it. Shut up, Navi. If I didn't know there was a sage here, I wouldn't have gone here in the first place. Well, I would have eventually, but I wouldn't have put it off until now. Either way, it's pointless. Also, just like in Link to the Past, they failed to fix the problem where you have all this space to explore Dark Death Mountain, but there's barely any caves. This time it's even worse because there's only one cave. How lazy. What a waste of level design. It's a cave where very thin, narrow platforms that the circle pad is not designed to precisely navigate you in a straight line on will fall down one by one. I know because I walked off the edge trying to walk up to one in the second cave like this. It starts out as a boring waiting game. At one point I walked straight into the one-eyed keys because Link is trapped at the center of the camera here, so the bat showed up too quick for me to react in time. And I didn't know it was coming, so that I could think to move the camera north beforehand. It became less boring when I had to fuse with the rising platform and go to another platform from it. And then I used a tornado rod twice to get onto a platform from below on a moving platform, with Link keeping the momentum from the platform he was on to keep going in this direction after tornado rods. That was fun to do once. It wasn't as fun doing it a second time because after I exited the cave, I reached the same fucking dead end that Bottle Guy and Hyrule had, and so I jumped down to the cave below me hoping it'd bring me to that peak, and it just brought me back to the same cave here. If there were more caves at the bottom of the mountain, it'd be nice to have one leading to the peak. Instead I'm confused as all hell about how to progress. I didn't notice the long, thin platform on the north side of the giant platform with a giant ice statue, because it moves on its own, and it was gone by the time I could have seen it the first time. After that, I'm really reminded of how the circle pad was not designed for moving precise straight lines, because I fell to my death trying to walk onto one of the thin platforms leading east, got knocked into the pit, respawning on the giant platform thanks to a bat out of nowhere, and I had to awkwardly and slowly avoid traps that the thin platform was rising up to by again, trying to walk into a straight line. I was expecting a piece of heart here and was disappointed. Dashing into a Yeti and getting hurt afterwards because the out of control momentum pushed me too far to the right, I went over to Turtle Rock, Icified Turtle Rock, which is Ice Palace now. I guess that's a shake-up. It does make a lot more geographical sense to have the cold ice dungeon be on top of a mountain instead of in the middle of a lake of all places. Was there ever any explanation for that?